Okay, there we have you. Awesome.
Hey,
Hey, Mark. Can you hear
how's
me?
it going?
Good.
I
I
can.
think it's good.
You're a little quiet at the moment, but
Okay, there we
oh,
have
there
you.
we go.
I'm
That's better.
quiet.
Hey,
Is this better? Can you hear
how's
me?
it
I hear you
going?
loud and clear.
I can. You're a little quiet at the moment, but oh, there we go.
I'm
That's better.
quiet.
All right, so
All right.
we're I guess we're finally
You
live
won't
here. I
really
got
see me, do you?
there's an awkward lag between what's happening on my phone here and what's happening on my screen up in front of me. So that
Ah, yes.
I'm gonna have to get used to that. But
Okay.
there we are.
Right. So I'm at the summer house now.
Excellent.
Did you see? Have you ever seen that?
You showed it to me once, and I love it. I don't know. I'm surprised you don't just live there full time.
Well, it's pretty tiny.
Yeah,
I can just give you a quick tour if you want. So
sure. And for everybody else watching, so this is Mikkel's got this little summer house in the middle of Copenhagen. So what
yeah,
it's a bit like the British have their weird little beach houses and allotment gardens. Am I right?
yeah. I think they're called allotment gardens actually.
Yeah.
So that's what we call this, a kolonihave in Danish. So colony
You called it
garden, but
what?
it's a kolonihave. So a colony garden. I don't know why it's called
Oh,
that.
okay.
A garden
Yeah.
colony. So it's like it was this. The original intent was to get people in the city. They should have some sort of a chance to grow their own vegetables and
Yeah.
to have some grass under their feet. So usually old junkyards and places like that were converted into these allotment gardens. And this was actually an old junkyard. So when we when I built this gate, the entry gate for
Yeah.
the garden, I couldn't get the posts all the way in. And what I found was some ceramic stuff, and I was like, "What is this?" And it turned out it was like a complete toilet.
Oh yeah. Nice.
So I had to do quite a bit more digging to get it all the way in.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. So before we start, I can just show you the house. So this is the inside. This is Gertrude, my wife.
Hello, Gretchen.
Yeah. And she's checking the emails that are coming in.
Excellent.
So this is the kitchen, and then this is where the kids sleep. So
That's
they're
brilliant.
bunks. Yeah. And we have these little hatches. I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
the yellow hatches there. Those
Yeah.
are pancake hatches. So they're designed for, go in
Feeding them
here,
pancakes from bed.
feeding them. And we
I love
open
it.
this cover, and then we can open
Yeah.
down here,
Right.
and there's one in the top bunk as well. I
Yeah.
don't know if it will open right now,
You
but
need you need to make a pancake gun to just start firing them through there.
there it is. So that's fun.
Love
But
it.
that's just the house. Yeah. So, but obviously that's not what we're going to talk about today.
No, we are not. We are here to talk about boats, and in particular, the Fiddlehead Canoe. There it is.
That's it. Yeah. So this is
It's a
the full size
gorgeous
model.
canoe.
Yeah, I like it too. And you've built a model of the Fiddlehead canoe.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Could you show
to
it
give
to us?
everybody context, so there's my model. To give everybody context for this, was it like 2 years ago now, Mikkel?
Yeah, around two
That
years
we,
ago we started.
yeah, that Mikkel decided to run his first online course, and it was done all live. So you built this boat in preparation for that to get some footage,
Yeah, that's the
and
thing,
then
and to learn,
yeah, yeah,
about
and then
teaching
your
online.
first. That's right. And then your first run of the course, I kind of sat in on it, and I participated in the form of building the model as opposed to the full size boat because I think
Yeah.
I had my 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 wherry was under construction at that
Mm,
time, so I had no room to
mm.
build a canoe along with you. I kind of wish I had, to be totally honest. I wish I could have done the full size thing. But the model's the next best thing. So I just followed along at all the steps along the way and to keep pace with the course and built the model.
A beautiful model. And what scale is that?
That is, I think it's 1 to 12. It's whatever scale was directly on the plans. The plans I know
Mm.
are a bit weird in that they've got several scales laid out on them.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
so whatever the sort of main lines drawing is, I just
Mm.
copied that exactly. I basically traced right off of the plans
Okay.
to make this. And I attempted to try and make all the parts like to scale as well. So the planking is the thickness is to scale, and the bottom the thickness is to scale and stuff like that. It's really
Mm-hmm.
difficult to do that at this small scale though. It's just like materials
Mm.
don't easily reduce down to
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that's
yeah.
very easily workable at that
Uh-huh.
when you bring it down that far. So whenever possible, I prefer to do models like quarter scale is probably the best size
Mm.
on average. Um,
So could you tell us a little bit more about why you do model building? So what do you think
why
is why do you like it?
I like it because it gives me it gives me a dry run of the actual build. If you're
Mm.
not if you're doing like a half model. So
Mm.
I've got a bunch of models stacked up here. So if you're doing just your typical half model like this, that's fine, and you can knock that out really quickly. So maybe
Mm.
a couple hours or something, or half a day at the most, and you've got something that looks like your boat at
Mm.
scale, and you can get a feel for the size and shape ish. But it's always
Mm.
only half a model. You can stick it
Yeah, yeah.
against a mirror to sort of give yourself a better idea as to what it really looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But by going through a full like planked model process like this, you get a dry run of the
Mm.
actual build, and
Mm.
it makes you think about all the little steps along the way.
Mm.
In some cases you are working at scale, so it's not exactly the same, but it can help you think about how am I going to hold this, what order of operations do I have to go through.
Mm.
um, so a good case in point is I was doing my scow project a little while back. So I built a scow for my own cottage use,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I built the full size boat first, and then I decided to do some rethink the design. So I built this model of it, and like halfway through building this model, my brain is starting to think about all the things I would do different. And
Mm.
it didn't take long before I was thinking I should just do another model, and started building another one. I went up a scale to try and get some of the details a bit better.
Mm.
And
Mm.
once again, as I'm walking through this, I'm thinking about all the little improvements I could make in terms of the construction, the small details, drainage, and air
Mm.
movement and stuff like that. And it got me to where I was even thinking about if I wanted to do like a smaller version, like a
Mm.
stand-up paddleboard version of it, and how light could I
Uh-huh.
make it. And then so I
Mm.
started knocking out this one. And so and you can even see if you look at on models, you can see here's a great for instance. So all the
Mm.
ribs on this one, or frames, or whatever you want to call them, are just straight across,
Mm. Mm.
but they don't support the plywood very well.
Sure.
And so on the other end, I switch up my thinking, and on the other end now I've got little cleats, either not just chopped into those or cleats added onto those to support
Mm.
that planking. So that way, this planking can be like a whole step lighter than
Mm.
than the planking that would go over here, just because it's supported a bit better. So maybe I can get away with 3/16 planking instead of quarter-inch planking, or vice versa. So it's by going through that model making process, it helps me really work through little details that
Yeah.
you're not thinking about until you're staring at it and faced with actually putting parts together.
So
And
it's
so
like a
I find
true.
model making extremely valuable from that perspective.
Yeah, so as a designer, it's extremely valuable, I think, but as a builder, it can be very valuable as well, in order to weed out mistakes and perhaps making the final process of building the boat much more efficient.
That's true. And every set of plans is only detailed up to a point. The more a designer to get a set of plans out the door,
Mm.
There's only so much time he can throw at it before he's just losing money because you can't recoup the time as easily, right? You only get so much. Maybe you get 75
Mm.
bucks for a set of plans. Like how many sets do you have to sell before you've anywhere close to the time it took you to draw them up?
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
and so designers routinely do have to sort of cut it off at some point and say, "This is as
Mm.
much detail as I can put in there." And so you, as the builder, have to fill in the blanks. Now, that's one of
Sure.
the things I like about building
Mm.
is that you are thrown into that design job along with along with the original designer because a you have different taste perhaps your
Yeah, yeah.
materials change
Mm.
your your tools might not lend themselves to one particular type of detailing
Mhm.
so from that perspective I think it's really um, it's one of the things that's challenging and fun about building.
Mm.
But for some people, they
I
may
agree.
find that a bit intimidating. You know, they want everything highly detailed.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So it does require some experience, I guess. And also, it requires you to make some choices also aesthetically and
yeah,
constructively
yeah.
also as well, for sure.
But that's how you gain experience. You
That's
know,
true.
that's the most important thing is you can't know. You know, one thing I think. I mean, I get inquiries from people about how to do certain things or how to choose designs or whatever, and
Mm.
they I can often tell from the questions sometimes that they've been doing a deep dive into forums and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
and trying to find answers about the best way to do a particular thing. And my answer to them is usually get the hell off of those forums. There's just you can overload yourself very easily. And I think your own experience is perhaps in some ways more valuable than any information or advice you might get off of a forum. Like you can if you got a very specific thing you want to ask about, fine, go ahead and
Mm.
try
Mm.
it out. But you're going to get 10 different answers, and half of them are going to conflict with each other. So I think you're better off like going to a
Mm.
book that has a construction process in it that's similar to the one you're working in, and just see if you can find the answer from that one source and try it.
Mm.
And once you've tried it, then you've got that under your belt and you can judge whether or not that was a good way to do it or not a good way to do it, and whether or not you encountered difficulties in doing that particular method, and whether or
You could
not you would try something different next time.
you could possibly actually try it on the scale model even, you know,
Exactly.
in
And,
some cases.
in many cases, yes.
Mm.
And that's a good point. Yeah, that's exactly where the scale model can really can help you work through that quite a
And
bit.
while the
And
scale model, it does take time to build. It's not as much time as the full size boat. And in terms of cost of materials, you can usually just use scraps from around your shop,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, or
Mm.
cardboard. I got
Sure.
yeah, I mean I got a whole box of models right here.
Mm.
Cereal box. Cheerios. You know? And this
That's
was like, I
wonderful.
don't know, another more cardboard from I think this was the back of a notepad or something like that, the
Mm.
stiff cardboard backing. So um and then when you start getting a little further into it, you can switch to, you know, other this is like aircraft plywood.
Mm.
You pay a little bit of money for that for sure. But it's not a
Mm.
huge amount of money.
Mm.
Um
By the way, perhaps we should just tell the viewers that what this is all about.
yeah,
Most of them probably know, but
fire away.
yeah. So today is about this boat, which is the Fiddlehead Canoe. So it'll be auctioned off, and the auction ends in how long, Mark? 45 minutes, 50 minutes or
Um
so?
let me see. We've got
I don't know.
48 minutes left.
We've got 48 minutes left.
Yeah,
So it goes to the highest bid.
that's right. Right now we're at 3,300 US dollars.
That's true. Yeah, so whatever the high bid is when it's 9 o'clock here in Denmark, whatever time that is where you are in the world, wins the boat.
Yeah.
So it's a Fiddlehead Canoe designed by Harry Bryan. We were just discussing scale models because Mark has built a scale model of this particular boat. Beautiful. But Mark, so this hour will be all about discussing this boat,
Yep.
and it'll be about answering questions from you guys if you have some. And I should probably mention that you can answer questions, but not on the auction webpage. So you need to go to YouTube. So you can click the YouTube button on the player if you're on the auction page to go directly to YouTube, and there you should be able to post questions in the chat, which we'll try to answer as best we can.
And the chat's in the sidebar, not the comment section below the screen. So
yeah. So they're both a chat and a comment section, Mark, if I get that right.
Pardon me?
So there's both a comment section and there's a chat.
That's right. Yeah. If you're on a desktop, on the right hand, well, on mobiles too, I guess, or at least on the landscape format, mobiles like a tablet, it'll be on the right hand side of your screen, and everything below the comment section below the screen is not what we're looking at. So
All right.
after the video's done, after the auction's done, and these are posted full time, that's where the comments come in. You can leave comments down there later on.
All right.
And I should mention that. Go ahead.
Yes. So I should mention that if you want to place a bid, you do that by email from the auction website. And my wife Gertrude, who is here, my two daughters, they're just having a bit of food. She'll be checking the email, and she'll be updating the website, and she'll be giving you a reply as soon as she sees the email with your bid. So
yeah.
So we'll be updated, and I'll be updated. She'll let me know if there's a new high bid. All right, but Mark, I'm just curious. Harry Bryan, who designed the Fiddlehead Canoe.
Yeah.
He's one of my big boat building heroes. He's
Yeah.
a pretty special guy. I guess you can safely say that.
Yes.
But you actually met him once.
I did.
And I'm pretty jealous of that. I'd really love to meet him at some point. I've only emailed with him.
He's not getting any younger, so
I should perhaps hurry.
Shift that up your list. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I know you were trying to email him about something or other related to a sail rig for that canoe, and you haven't gotten a response. That's because he doesn't even own a computer. He doesn't own a refrigerator.
Okay, tell us about it.
Harry Bryan's shop is completely off grid.
Mm.
He's one of the original Back to the Landers who moved from the States. I think I don't remember where in the States he lived, but somewhere in the Northeast. But he moved to New Brunswick back around like 1970, 71, something like that, and bought a little piece of property. It's not a huge piece of property, but it's it's not tiny either, and it's on waterfront. And he's set to homesteading there with his wife, and so he's got a great little house, and in particular, he built this gorgeous workshop, all stone construction with stones he pulled up off of the beach. Like I can't even imagine the effort of just schlepping rocks. And it's not like you can load up a wheelbarrow at the beach and just casually carry it up to where the building site is. It's like a higgledy-piggledy little scramble up, to get from where his water access is to where the shop is. But anyway, it's like a tumbled beach stone construction with a slate roof as well. I don't know where he got the slate from, but he put a slate roof on this thing. And it's all the machines are either pedal powered, or he's got like a big, like a Suzu engine or something that he uses with a belt drive, like a line drive, to run his power planer and a big bandsaw. I can't remember.
It's like under the workshop floor, right?
Yeah, and I don't remember if he had a table saw set up there or not. He must have had something, but I don't remember. But mostly he uses treadle power stuff as much as possible. Yeah,
and hand powered tools like hand planes and hand saws
yeah,
and
yeah, lots of that.
stuff like
So
that. Yeah, yeah.
he's a lovely, lovely guy. We spent a whole afternoon with him, my wife hanging out inside with his wife chit chatting, the kids goofing around. They get sort of this cool little watchtower on top of his house, so the kids were
Oh.
basically up there hanging out, and on top of that, looking at kids' books and stuff like that.
Mm,
And you could see his grandchildren had built forts all around the property, and so it was very, very cool. Um,
mm,
yeah, I I'll tell you, I would love to just be able to hang out with him for several months if I could.
yeah,
That'd be quite the treat.
yeah. Yeah, so what I like, I haven't met him personally, unfortunately, yet, but he's been very kind, very supportive about this course that I have coming up
Mhm.
and the entire building process for the Fiddlehead Canoe here. Um, but what I really like about him is sort of his philosophy about building boats. I think it's very much about having a good building process. Having fun building it, not being perhaps he doesn't mind being efficient, but he doesn't want to be efficient for efficiency's sake. So I
Yeah,
think what he likes to do is to, basically to have a good time in the workshop, to work creatively with your hands, to work with your mind, to create
yeah,
something of lasting beauty and something that's useful and valuable and which can last a long time and which doesn't use up Earth's resources too quick.
yeah.
So I think that's very, yeah, I really like
I
that way of
think if
thinking.
it, like based on Harry's philosophy, I'd say if you
Mm,
want to be efficient, the best way to do that is to keep things simple.
yeah.
Don't get super fussy with weird little details and carving and moldings and stuff like that. Like
Mm,
keep it as bare bones as you can,
yeah.
and the efficiency will come.
Yeah. Actually, that's what I like about his designs as well. So I've just I've only built a few of them, but I think they're very classic, but I think they're actually quite simple also. So this design, for example, the Fiddlehead, which
Yeah,
is the boat that we're selling today on auction. Perhaps we could talk a little bit about the design.
sure.
So I can just give a very quick introduction. So it's called a double paddle canoe, and I think some people, when they first see it, can be a little bit puzzled about, is this a canoe or is it a kayak? I don't know. What do you think, Mark? I think the explanation might be the fact that the shape of the boat is more canoe-like. It rides on top of the wave. It doesn't waves. It doesn't like poke through the waves. It doesn't go
Yeah,
through the waves like a kayak would. But it still has the decking, and it still has the
yeah,
double paddle here. So that's this is joined together with this brass ferrule. So like it's like
mhm.
one long paddle, it's just in two pieces. So it's sort of like a mix between a canoe and a kayak.
It is very much a hybrid. Yes,
Yeah. So as far as I know, the type was invented by a guy called John McGregor,
that's
who was
correct. Yeah,
also known as Rob Roy back in the mid 1800s. So and as far as I know, he had been to the Arctic and I think also to Canada, and he had
yeah,
experienced the natives of these areas how they used their kayaks, which were very different in construction, but he was sort of inspired by them, and then he created a boat which was built in a more Western tradition, but which still had a lot of the elements of these kayaks.
that's right. He had a British shipwright. He went to a local boatyard back in Britain, and had a local just described to a shipwright what it was that he wanted, and that's what they
Mm,
came up with. So, in that
mm,
tradition, you want something light, you build lapstrake.
mm,
Um, the idea of a double ender is not exactly foreign. The question is just bringing down the proportions to something that is canoe like, and of course they'd know what a birch bark canoe would
mm.
look like generally, I suppose. And then of
Yeah.
course you deck it. I think his decking was canvas, his original boat,
Okay.
more than likely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
So
of
it's a lot.
course
Mm.
employ the double paddle to make it more efficient to propel. So
Mm.
I think they're a true hybrid. They are an odd one, and people don't know about them, which is very curious, given
Mm.
that they actually predate in many ways the popularized Canadian style canoe.
Mm. Mm.
So Rushton, so there's a famous builder that was really, you could almost say, single-handedly brought these to the masses, and his name was John Henry Rushton.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Kenton, New York. He started building in 1873. He
Mm.
was he was working in a he worked in the lumber industry, but he was quite did he? Let me think for a second. Oh, that was his father who worked in the lumber. No, he was kind of a skinny kid who I think he was a shoe salesman when he actually moved to Canton, New York, and he wanted to get
Uh-huh.
out into the. He was sickly, wanted to get out into the wilderness, which is what they were doing back in that day. That was considered the best way to sort of cure your ailments, which was basically living in heavily polluted cities.
Yeah.
You got out to clear your lungs of all the soot and
Mm. Mm.
carcinogens.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
anyway, so he needed a boat to get out in on the water out there, and somebody loaned him a boat pattern. Now, by that, I don't know if that means a set of plans or if it
Mm.
was. It might have just been like a couple of. It was probably like for a flat bottom skiff of some sort, and they probably
Uh-huh.
just lent him a couple planks that represented the boat sides.
Okay.
And anyway, so somebody, before he even got that done, somebody offered to buy it off him. And
Uh-huh.
then another guy came along and offered to buy another boat, but he said, just make sure it's a damn sight better than that one. And within the next few years, he was in business. By 3 years later, he was building canoes and had advertisements out.
Mm.
He had won an award at one of the local like a local symposium of some sort for best in class or whatever the hell they called it. And
Mm-hmm.
so he used that as a boost in his advertising to say he'd won best in show. And he was
Mm-hmm.
offering light sporting boats, portable canoes and such that were like 30 to 55 pounds, that kind of thing, which
Yeah.
is crazy. Like that's incredibly light for a
It is.
solid wood
It
boat.
is.
Like there's no
Yeah. Yeah.
plywood around yet.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
However, he did have white cedar, which is an
Yes.
incredibly good boat building wood,
Yeah.
very lightweight
Mm-hmm.
for its strength.
Mm. And
Um,
durable too.
yeah, yeah, really good rot resistance, and I mean, to this day, that's the preferred wood for making cedar canvas canoes. But it's gotten harder and harder to lay your hands on.
Yeah, I think that's what
So
Harry is using as well, actually.
yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one is built of larch. So I
Yep.
don't have white cedar around. So what we use in Denmark where I live is usually larch.
Hmm.
We have good supply of oak, and of course that makes it a little bit heavier. Some of the parts are oak. Actually, all the varnished parts of this boat are oak. Of course, that adds a little bit of weight. So this isn't the most lightweight boat you could get, but obviously that's a little bit to strength and hardness of some of the parts. So I could reduce the dimensions of some of the parts a little bit because they were made of oak and
Sure.
large too. So I reduced the planking thickness a little bit um, from what
Did
Harry had
did you use
specified.
oak? Did you have oak planks on that?
No, that all the painted wood on the boat is large. So
Okay.
the planking and the bottom are large, but
Yep.
all the varnish parts are oak.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. The
yeah.
deck is beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. So actually, I the decking is new. Originally, the decking was large as well, but I had a little accident on one of the first sea trials. So I can tell you about that. I had a friend trying out the boat, and when he pushed himself out of the boat, he pushed against the coaming, and there was some sort of hidden defect in the coaming wood, so it cracked,
Ah,
which was kind of a bummer. So I
yeah.
had to replace the coaming, which I did. but then I wanted to re-varnish the decking as well. But
Mhm.
what happened then was I used a scraper to take off some of the bedding compound and some of the varnish, and somehow the corner of this scraper dug into the decking. So I got this deep scratch, which was like
Ugh.
horrible. And it was like, okay, should I just try to sand this away? I tried to sand it away, and then I got this big dish,
Yeah.
which would be would be very easy to see once it was varnished. So I was like, okay, I need to redeck this boat. So the thing is, the decking is actually, or the covering boards as they're called here, the boards on the sides. So it's like a two-layer deck. The covering
Yeah.
boards are actually epoxied to the carlins and the shear
Right.
clamps, which are underneath.
Yeah.
So they're pretty hard to replace. So what I did was I milled out a very thin piece of oak, like 1/8, 3 millimeters, and then I actually just epoxied it onto the existing covering boards, and then I just replaced the decking, which is these pieces on the top, because they weren't epoxied in place. You know,
Yeah.
they're screwed on just with some
Good solution.
Sikaflex underneath. So that was
Yeah.
how it turned out. So it took a little bit, it took a little bit of extra time, but I think it's actually turned out quite nice, and the added weight is minimal. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess that's stuff that happens when you build boats.
That's right. Okay, I'm going to pop to the washroom for just a minute, so I'm going to leave you to
Okay,
sort of jaw wag on your own.
oh,
I'll be
that's
right
fine.
back. Okay.
No
Too much
problem.
coffee.
Yeah, I can tell you guys a little bit about the boat. So we talked about John McGregor and his Rob Roy canoe, which he used to sail, all over the world. So he has written boats about this. One of them is called "A Thousand Miles in the Rob Roy Canoe" I think it's through the canals of Europe. Um, so he's written loads of books about all his adventures. So that was a boat that's very similar to this one, but it's a little bit different. Perhaps you can see the bottom of this boat is flat. So this boat doesn't have a keel. It's the so-called Dory construction, which means that it has a plank bottom, which is sort of like eye shaped. So it's like I don't know what you call it, not a teardrop shape, but sort of like an eye, shaped like an eye. And then you attach the planking directly to this bottom panel. So you can see the first plank is here. So here we have the bottom panel, and then we have the first plank attached here next to it. So I think that's one of the little strokes of genius from Harry Bryan. So instead of having to plank, create a backbone like a stem and a keel, and then plank it onto that, with perhaps 7 or 8 planks on each side. So, Mark, I'm just talking a little bit about the Dory construction. So I think
Yep.
that's one of the big differences between this Harry Bryan design and the original John McGregor one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just discussing why you would want to use the Dory construction instead of like a backbone and lapstrick planking all along.
Well,
So
simplicity for
yeah,
sure.
exactly. So for one thing, you get a flat bottom, which can be, you know, convenient. Like in this example, I have the boat on these stools, which is possible because it has a flat bottom. It's really easy to put on top of the car, but it's also a lot quicker to build. You don't have as many planks. You don't have to create a keel. So you have the plank bottom, and then you attach the stems to that, and then you can start planking, and you only have 3 planks on each side. So it's
Yeah.
pretty quick to build, and you know, you don't get quite the same shape as you would in a fully planked traditional lapstrake boat with a keel, and yeah, but you get something that's very close to it.
Yeah. And I think Harry got inspiration for this particular design from Hershoff. So
Yeah,
there's a design Hershoff came up with many years ago for essentially the same thing. Of course, is the style? It's styled a little bit differently. I
mm,
don't know what year this was done, but but you can see the direct relationship between the two.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And he was a big fan of these boats. I think he has. There's some sort of quote from him saying that it's like his favorite boat, even though he's built huge
Yeah.
sailing boats, and but he still kind of prefers this little one, because it's just so easy to use and so much fun to be out in.
We'll see if
You're looking for the quote?
yeah. I don't know.
So while you're looking for that, so one thing I'd
But
like
there's
to ask you.
there's some nice details in this that go along with this design for stuff that you could apply directly to Harry Bryan's canoe as well. So that's from Sensible Cruising Designs by Francis Hershoff.
Yeah, that's a lovely boat. Book, sorry. So Mark, I'd like to ask you a little bit about some of the details in this boat. So do you have any favorite details that we should
Yes.
discuss? So what would those be?
In particular, I love the way the deck is done in 2 different layers that allow you to sort of get away with having just working with single planks for each side.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's both attractive and practical because it requires very little deck structure to support all of that, as opposed to trying to build up the deck with like little skinny laminations or something like that. Because I've seen that on other canoes of this sort of canoes that are inspired from this era. You'll often see sort of almost like strip built decking on them, done
Okay.
in like little half-inch square strips of
Mm.
often alternating pine and mahogany, which is something I can't stand personally. But anyway, I just love the way this looks. I think it's really classy. And from a practical point of view, I mean, you're able to basically replace half the deck there with very little wood.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a nice detail. I like the double-ended configuration of the cockpit combing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's really attractive. I've done square end cockpits on kayaks and stuff like that, and they're okay, but they're not as nice looking as that is.
And I think the way he suggests doing these ends is pretty great as well.
Yep.
It's a really easy way to get a very good result in terms of making the combing sides fit this rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
So the way it's done is that the combing sides are installed first, then a triangle is glued in, and this triangle actually sort of pokes past the combing ends, and then you simply do a saw cut down here, and then you glue on a triangle to the end, and then you trim it off, sort of plane and a sanded flush, and then you get a perfect fitting rabbit here. So you get a very good result, and it's much easier than you think when you look at it, right?
And I've tried doing it the hard way.
Have you?
And it is unbelievably difficult. It looks simple. It looks like you could just make a block with a little notch in it so that you could have square ends on those combings. And it is anything but simple trying to pull that off. It is really, really challenging.
Like for cutting this block alone with the rabbit, I think would be hard. But then making this piece fit in terms of length, in terms of double bevels, sounds like insanely difficult. It has to fit
I
both
mean,
ends, right?
there's tricks to it. But that's a tough one. And trying to get it in, of course, because you've got something that is longer than the hole that you're trying to put it into.
Exactly.
So if that's got to be exact, that's that much trickier.
Yeah. And actually, for this one, when I replaced this combing, I beefed up the thickness of it a little bit because I didn't want this next one to break.
Yeah.
So the first one wasn't steam bent, But this next one, because it was a little bit thicker, I decided to put it in the steam box, which made it go in really easy.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty solid now.
Yeah, for sure. And you could have added a bit of trim to the outside of that as well if you wanted to, a little round over. If you remember
Yeah, I
my
didn't.
2.4 meter
Yeah.
project, you'll see I did a
Yes.
not dissimilar cockpit, and I
Mm.
trimmed it out with a little 1/2 inch round
Yeah, I
over
remember that.
detail that goes all the way around. I mean, it's a pile of extra work, but you can add strength to a light combing,
Sure.
something like that.
Yeah, that's.
I think you need to be careful when you're doing combings to not make them too big. I mean, there's a temptation
Yeah.
to make them really tall, but when you're paddling, you're really trying to keep you everything that's sticking up above the deck is getting in your way.
Mm.
Um, and especially if you make a boat that's too deep and you're not sitting high enough to compensate for that, you can
Mm.
find paddling to be kind of awkward. Your
Mm.
paddle banging against the sides of the canoe. So when with double paddle canoes, that's sort of the one thing that they struggle with over a kayak. Is kayaks are just lower volume by their very nature. You tend to make them a bit narrower, and so you can get your paddle to the water with fewer obstructions. Now,
Okay.
it's not that insurmountable, but it's something to think about if you're playing around with canoe design to not go too large. Double paddle canoes are narrower than a full size canoe. You try and use a double
Mm.
paddle in a full size canoe, and you're going to find it doesn't work so well. You're sitting too high for one thing, so you got to be sitting down in the boat for the
Yeah. Yeah.
geometry to work at all.
Sure.
And if you raise yourself up on a seat too much, then you start imparting instability into the whole arrangement, right? It starts
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
tippy. How does that boat
Mm.
feel in the water? I've never paddled that particular design, so I don't know.
I think it feels great, and the fact that you're sitting on the bottom. Obviously, there are advantages to both styles of canoe. With a double paddle
Yeah,
or the single paddle, and sitting on top or sitting on the bottom. But I think
yeah,
it feels extremely stable. So
yeah,
actually, I was in the water in this particular boat, like when I was doing the first sea trials, and it was a summer day, and I was just like, I wanted to see if I could capsize it, sitting in it, and it was pretty darn hard, to
yeah.
getting to fill it up with water. So it's
Hmm.
very stable, I think. So it feels very stable, and it glides easily through the water. Obviously, it doesn't. I would say it tracks quite well. It does want to go more or less straight, but obviously, when you do a paddle stroke on one side of the boat, it does take a slight turn to the left and then a slight turn to the right. So it's sort of like doing this zigzag movement a little bit. But
Yeah,
I think
well,
it's easy, pretty easy to maneuver, but it feels stable enough also. The bottom has a little bit of rocker to it also, which I think helps, just like a
now
half inch or
there's
something.
no keelson on the bottom of that, right?
No, that's right.
Yeah. So even if you added a small keelson, that would probably help it to track a little bit.
Mm.
And of course, Harry had this crazy fishtail rudder configuration
Yeah,
that
yeah,
allowed
yeah,
you to use it like a pedal boat.
yeah. What's it
So
called?
it was like a rudder with this plastic fin on it that would kind of swish back and forth. I don't know how well that works, but
I
that
think it
was one
works
of the
pretty
things
well. So that's
yeah,
a very similar boat, but with the fishtail. Yeah, I think the
yeah,
plans are on his website.
yep.
I never built that though, but I would love to.
I find it a bit goofy, and it adds so much complication to the design over keeping it simple.
So
So
this is
there you are
another
with
one, another
yeah,
favorite detail.
the watertight hatch is a very cool little thing. I love
So this
that.
is a piece of ash which sort of acts like a spring. So there's this threaded insert, and then there's a thumb screw which sort of pulls it tight. And because it's oval in shape, you can sort of twist it in like this. Let's see if I can do it one-handed. And there are these little stop blocks which stops it, and then you just turn this one, which pulls the ash clamping bar tight against the back of the watertight bulkhead and sort of really makes it close tightly. I think that's
Yeah.
another lovely detail about the boat. That's the watertight compartments at the end. You have one at each end, which helps a lot with buoyancy. So I mentioned earlier that it's pretty hard to capsize, but if you should capsize it, then you have these watertight compartments, which really helps the boat float high.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it
so it
makes a
doesn't
big
fill up.
difference if you gotta if you need to deal with a capsize, having some buoyancy really
Yeah,
helps. That's a
exactly.
lot of water inside a boat that size.
Yeah. So Mark, I think we have some connection problems inside, so I just need to go help
Okay.
Gertrude. So if you could entertain for a little while, I'll just give you a shot of the boat, and I'll just go inside for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I first became aware of Harry Bryan when I was going to boat building school, and while I was there, an issue of Wooden Boat magazine came out that featured Harry Bryan and featured his off grid shop, and I was just immediately captivated by it. And when I finished boat building school, I moved up from Port Townsend to back to Canada to Vancouver Island area. Actually, I moved to Bowen Island, which is a small. It's almost like a commuter neighborhood for Vancouver, but it is an island. And as one of my schoolmates was living there, and he wanted me to help him build a boat. So the two of us set to doing that. But when I got there, what I was really surprised at was there was this boat sitting in his driveway, and it was one of these. It was a Fiddlehead canoe that a friend of his had built with Harry Bryan and was storing it at my schoolmate's property. And I was just immediately struck by the fact that it felt like the design felt like it was 100 years old already. And it
Hmm.
was practically a brand new boat, but I was just so intrigued by it. I don't know why I have never built one of these myself to date,
Mm.
which is crazy because I love everything about it. And double paddle canoes, it was double paddle canoes that got me into boat building in the first place.
Was it?
My first boat was not a double paddle canoe; it was a kayak.
Hmm.
But the kayak I built because I was intimidated about building the double paddle canoe. If that makes any
Mm.
sense,
Mm.
I think my memory's a little foggy on this, but y- I think I just I wanted to build a boat. I got it into my head to build a boat. I went to the library. There was no internet yet.
Mm.
Not like we know it. It was dial up internet. It was no, not even dial up bulletin boards. It was the closest thing to the
So that was
internet.
late
Yeah,
90s or something like that?
yeah,
Mid
not even
90s,
late.
perhaps?
Mid early
Okay.
90s.
Mm.
Okay, so when I was in college, I went to an art college. We had one professor who was into the internet. And he
Uh-huh.
decided to show us what the internet was all about, which at the time was only bulletin boards. And he spent like days to set up like this internet station for us to check out. And
Mhm.
it was a big kerfuffle to set up a bunch of computers in the classroom and get a connection to the internet through there because there was nothing like that. And in the end,
Mm.
there's all you could do was like get on these like weird bulletin boards and chat with people. And I don't think
Mhm.
any of us knew what to do with it, right? but but when I started building, I did find a bulletin board that was in Toronto that was called Ship to Shore,
Mm.
in which there was a guy. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he was like the director of the Toronto Maritime Museum. And
Mhm.
so anyway, I was able to sort of pepper him with a few questions about constructions, just stuff I had no answers to, nowhere to find
Mm.
answers to it because
Mhm.
there was nothing out there. And certainly, I mean, if your library didn't have the book
Mhm.
that you wanted, then you went to your local bookstore, which in my case was like this suburb in Toronto where the bookstore was a Coles. You wouldn't know what that
Mm.
is, but there's nothing there but like shitty like paperback serial
Yeah.
novel and
Uh-huh.
coffee table books, and you're not going to find anything of real interest in one of
Yeah.
those bookstores. It was at like a typical shopping mall, so there's just no source for these books. And
Yeah.
when I did get into boat building school, I don't even remember where there was like two books on our reading list. I have no idea how I got my hands on them. I must have had to go downtown and shop around, or maybe I had to order. Maybe I
Post
ordered them
order, perhaps.
through the mail.
Mail order. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's such a big difference how
It's,
easy it
I,
is to get your
I
hands on
know.
information these days, right?
Yeah,
There's so
easy
much
to
to
get
find. It's
information,
pretty
but
amazing.
hard to find boat materials.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the
Yeah,
building materials are getting hard to find, at least the wood, I
some
guess.
of them. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
By the way, Mark, I should just mention that we have around 10 minutes left of the auction.
Oh, okay.
So the highest bid is still 3,300 US dollars, which is, I think the materials for this boat is maybe 2,000, maybe 50. I would say around 2,000, perhaps.
Yeah,
So I think it's a pretty good deal for a boat like this one, 30,
yeah, I agree.
3,300. So I would say, where I live in Denmark, labor is really crazy expensive, and this boat was
Yeah,
perhaps, I think it's around, it has been at least 300 hours of work for me to build it.
yeah,
So if you were to order one of these boats, it would be very expensive. But obviously, I built this boat because I were developing this boat building course, this online apprenticeship program. So obviously, I didn't build it for a customer, and I built it because I wanted to learn about this design. So that's why you're having this chance to get a boat at a very good price right now.
yeah.
But one thing I would like to mention is, perhaps you already know that, but there are some bonuses also in relation to the auction. So depending on
Explain
what
those to
the
me.
highest bid is, the bonuses.
Yeah.
Yeah, just actually, I actually need to look at the website to remember them. Do you have the
Okay,
website there,
I
Mark?
got. Yeah, I could read them out, but I don't understand them exactly. Give me a second
Okay,
here.
I can tell about,
Uh,
if you can read them out. Then while you
All
find them,
right.
Mark, I can. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's see.
If you don't have them there, I can just
No, I got them.
talk
I got
about.
them.
You
All
got them
right.
there. All right.
So it's a little
$100.
confusing the way you wrote these down, to be honest. But anyway, $1, you
Okay,
get a boat.
you get a vote. Yes, that's
So
the
this is
vote.
when
So
these are like tiers that when you cross them, you're gonna get something, right?
when you cross, I mean, and they're cumulative, so you get
Got it.
everything. You know,
At $100, you get a small boat school sweatshirt plus stickers.
which is this one. So you get one of these and stickers.
Not the one you're wearing, but a fresh one.
A fresh one for sure.
Okay,
Okay.
at $1,000, you get access to the online boat building course,
Yes.
the apprenticeship,
Uh,
as you call it,
which
building
is
for the
about
community.
building this boat.
Right.
So the price for this course or apprenticeship is actually $1,000. So basically, you get the boat for free.
Okay. Cross the $2,000. These are U.S. dollars, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Mm.
Cross the $2,000 threshold, and we get 5 hours of personal boat building mentoring,
Yes.
calls with Mikkel.
Calls. So
So
that
phone calls or
those would be
videos or
FaceTime or Zoom calls with me. So if
yep.
you want to build your own boat, let's say you get this boat, to have something to play with while you build
That's
another
right.
one.
You got to build
And
the
then
next one.
then
Go
you
up a
have one
size.
for you and one for your wife or for your brother, or you know, so you can go paddling together. But then you
Yeah,
get
and you know
these
what?
5 hours of coaching calls.
Let me just jump in and say I think that's one of the coolest things about boats like this
Yeah.
is being able to have two of them
Yes.
and to paddle with somebody else where you're not yelling at the back of someone's head, that you can actually have a
Yeah.
conversation as you go just paddle side by side and chit chat with each other, because dual dual paddling in a kayak or whatever is miserable. It's not fun.
Mm.
It's not so bad in a regular canoe, but when you get double bladed paddles in there, trying to
Hmm.
coordinate and like there's nothing good comes out of it. Okay,
Yeah.
moving along. three
Yeah.
thousand bucks gets you
Yes.
handmade clamp for low lap strike boat building.
Yeah, so those are the
One
clamps
clamp?
just one clamp. So you might say that's a high price for for a clamp, but you do get a boat also. Remember that.
Well, it's a clamp kit basically because you can use it for design. Now, I think is it this style?
It is.
Yeah. So I just I had one of my YouTube fans or Instagram fans send me a bunch of these guys, and I'm suddenly drawing a blank on his name. Steve, I think. Anyway, so
Okay.
he sent me a few of these. He's going to send me some kitted ones as well. So thank you very much, Steve. By the way.
They're pretty great for lap strike boat building, especially if you're working single-handed. I think they
Yeah.
can be really useful.
Yeah, I've never used that specific style before, but I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, handmade at $4,000. We get a handmade boat builder's toolbox.
Yes. So that's this one. I just brought my own.
Oh, your tote. Okay, nice.
Yeah, the tool tote. Okay.
Yeah,
Mark,
I
by
love
the
it.
way, do you have the time there? Because I don't have it here. Are we getting close
Yes,
to?
we might be ticking over 6 minutes 43 seconds.
So you still have 6 minutes and 43 seconds to place a bid if you're
Yep.
interested in getting this boat. So the high bid right now is $3,300 US.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now
So we
we've
have
crossed all of
some.
those.
Yeah.
So if it goes
So
up a few more bucks, next person.
yes,
No, that was the $4,000 one. We have not met that one. So at
we have
seven
not met.
grand, just for the sake of conversation, because I don't know sure if we're going to make that
That,
in the next few
we
minutes.
we
But
don't know.
anyway,
Mm-hmm.
at $7,000, bucking iron and boat builders level.
Bevel. Yeah. So that's actually one of the students
Bevel,
who
sorry,
were
bevel, not
Bevel.
level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the students at the. So I've had some pilot students while I was developing this course, and one of these students has he's a mechanical engineer, actually
Yeah,
working at NASA, and
nice.
he's made some of these bucking irons or backing
Oh,
irons.
so he did do that, eh?
He did do that, yeah. So
Okay.
that's the next one. So that's one of these tools that you use for clench nailing and for copper riveting, but you can't really buy them anywhere. So you probably have one there, Mark.
So there's the ones I use. You can
Mm.
actually get you can get sort of this weird one that Osborne makes.
Mm-hmm.
Osborne make like sail making gear, like needles and stuff like that, and they have this clenching iron in their tool lineup.
Mm.
But it's pretty lightweight. It's not really what we would use. I think it's more for like just setting like copper like rivets for clothing accessories, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow,
All right.
moving
So
along, we have the downwind sail rig at $10,000.
yeah. So we didn't. I don't know if we have time to talk about that, but that's a sail rig that Harry Bryan designed
I got a
for the
picture.
boat. You have a picture. That's the
Sort of
picture.
like this doesn't make sense. It just looks like a bucket, but what it is like it's like a downwind, almost like a square sail
Uh-huh.
that you use half of your paddle in here. So your paddle
That's it. I'll just flip around
picture's
my
kind of cut
camera
off.
here. So
The blade of the paddle fits into a little yoke you create here in the yard, and then of course you'd need to yeah, exactly. So you that paddle would whoop, go right up there,
mm,
get captured, and then you'd have to put a mast partner and a mast step into the boat itself to facilitate that. But that's kind of a
mm,
cool little thing.
mm. By the way, listen to this sound.
Woo!
I love that.
Toit, man, toit.
Yeah. So this is the two-piece paddle. So the reason it's two-piece is simply because otherwise it would be too long to fit inside the boat. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit handier.
Hmm.
So this is made out of pine. So that's the only pine in relation to the boat, and it has these grip stops. And that's one of the downsides to double paddles, of course. You know, if you have a single paddle, you know, you go like this, you don't get any water in your sleeve.
No.
But with a double paddle, you do get one pad the paddle into the water, and when it's up in the air, water wants to run down on your hands into your sleeve. So that's why we have these drip stops, which sort of make the water drip off.
Yeah,
So
I've never
works
found they
quite nice.
work that well personally,
I,
but
I think these work fine. This paddle is
do they?
fairly long as well, which means that it
Yeah.
doesn't get too high up in the air.
Well, that's the
I think it
trick,
works.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. And these are just leather drip stops,
Nice.
glued on with contact cement.
So for the benefit of people watching, now you had your paddles or your paddle blades oriented off each other, right? Like
Yes. Okay, I can
30
just
degree
show
or
that.
something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're not quite 90 degrees. I don't remember the exact figure. I think it's maybe 80 degrees. So you have one,
Okay.
this one is vertical, right? And then we have the other one, which is not quite horizontal, but almost.
So so that is something I think that design choice is something that is misunderstood. Some people think it's for windage.
Yeah,
That actually comes out of the whitewater slalom world, in which as you're coming around a flag in a whitewater slalom race and you're hugging that flag,
mm,
it's to
hmm.
keep the one blade of the paddle that's up in the air from whacking the flag. So it turns it,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, it turns it in line with the flagpole so that you can scoot past it. Because these guys just like they hug the turn so tight, right?
Wow.
So that's the reason for that. And it just, as all things in sport, they make this migration to recreational use, and
Okay, I
sometimes the
had no
reasons for
idea.
that get lost.
But for me,
So
it's like it's just ergonomic as well. It feels natural to sort of like go like this. I don't know.
sure, if that works for
I
you.
just think it feels much more natural. I would say if they were both in the same plane, it would feel weird for me at least.
So yeah,
But
in Greenlandic style paddling, we use
mm,
our blades are in the same plane, but we use a very
yeah,
different stroke. We use
yes,
a stroke where you actually angle the blade as it
mm,
enters the water, so it's coming in at like, I don't know, not a 90-degree angle, but more like a 40 or 45-degree
mm,
angle. And it's not a stroke that you'd want to try with a big wide bladed paddle like that. It would
mm,
feel super weird and feel like the paddle dives like crazy. But in a Greenland kayak where you're everything is lower to the water, you're practically underwater. The perfect Greenland kayak, I think.
we have a new bit.
Oh,
Let
really?
let us hear. We have how much?
Did we?
So there's a bid of 3,500 now.
Woo!
What time is it now, Gertie?
Oh,
It's 9 o'clock exactly. So okay. So the thing is, in order to avoid, somebody placing a bid just in the last moment, so nobody has the chance to react, um, we will have to extend the auction with 10 minutes. So that's part of the auction rules. It's also described on the auction page.
oh, okay.
So for each bid that's within the last 10 minutes of the auction, we'll extend the auction by 10 minutes in order for, other bidders to get the time to respond. I
Yeah,
actually
fair
I
enough.
looked into. I've never held an auction before, and there's a
Yeah,
term for that, and it's called sniping.
yeah. That's right.
So you can snipe an auction, just placing a bid in the last moment. So, but we do
Sniping's
have a
not
high bid.
nice.
It's not nice. So we have a high bid of 3,500 now, and we'll
Okay, good.
extend the auction by 10 minutes, and extend the talk by 10 minutes if you have the time, Mark.
I've got to. I got in 15 minutes. I got to disappear. Got kids that need to
Okay,
get
sure.
driven to work.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to place a higher bid, then you have almost 10 minutes, like maybe 8 minutes
Yeah.
to respond. If you place a bid, in let's say 8 minutes, then I'll have to extend it a further 10 minutes. But Mark, if you need to go, then that's fine. So if
Okay.
you want to place a higher bid, then you could just do it right away, because there's no use in, trying to place a bid in the last moment, just to keep things fair. Okay, so thanks for that. I think
So if you
Gertie
were
will
to
update the website.
So if you were to build this boat all over again, Mikkel, are there any differences in construction that you would go with?
That's a good question. Um,
Or let's rephrase that. So what are some options for someone who is building this boat who um, that
mm,
might make the job a little bit easier or a little more traditional? Like we can go
yeah.
either
So
direction.
so this boat is built out of natural wood, which is what Harry Bryan suggests. So you could use plywood instead, which would probably save you a little bit of time in terms of not having to mill the wood. Might be a little bit easier to find as well, and you wouldn't have to clench nail or copper rivet the planks. You could glue them. That would be, that would take some time. I guess it would perhaps be a little bit easier. So I personally prefer to use natural wood because I do have access to it. I do have a thickness planer and a bandsaw to cut it up. And I like to work with it. So I would definitely go with natural wood again. I'm not that big a fan of using glues either if I can avoid it.
Hmm.
So I think I would. I think I would go with more or less the same construction. But I would say that one of the tricky things about building the boat is actually the Dory construction part.
Right.
So I think the connection between the bottom panel and the garboard plank, so the first plank from the bottom, can be a little bit tricky out here towards the ends
Yeah.
because the angle is so it's
There's a
pretty.
lot.
I don't know if you call it sharp, but it's kind of hard to get a good connection between between the two planks with a mechanical fastener.
Yeah. There's a
I
lot
don't
of
know if you would
twist
agree,
going
Mark.
on.
There's a lot of twist going on. Yeah. So that's one of the tricky things I think about this, because oh, sorry, I'll just turn it around.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of angle between the flat bottom and then
Yeah.
this first plank, which is so when you do lap straight planking, it's easier if there isn't too much of an angle difference between the two planks. So if they are more or less parallel, it's much easier to get the rivet or the clench nail in
Yeah. And you
correctly.
used rivets on the next boat, right?
I did, yes. And
Yeah.
the reason for that's another story. But the reason I did that was actually because I'm using large for this boat instead of the white cedar that Harry Bryan specifies.
Yeah.
And large has a bit of a tendency for creating some splits. So
Yeah.
they're not like big bad structural splits, but they just don't look really nice. So when I did the clench nailing for this boat, um, there were just in a few places where the nail sort of curls over, it
Yes.
created a split where it sort of re-entered, and it
Yep.
just didn't look all that nice. So I thought, well, if I try with copper rivets instead, then it might not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
actually it did
That's a
split in a
tough
few
one.
places. So yeah, so I think well, that's one of the downsides to to the wood that I'm using, the large.
Right.
So it has
Yeah.
some benefits as well, but especially out here where you have a lot of when the angle is pretty steep for
Yep.
the garboard plank and the bottom panel obviously is flat. Um, you know, it does have a bit of a tendency to create these splits because the fastening goes in at such an odd angle.
Yeah. So I
Mm,
think some options there is if you had
mm,
perhaps added a small chine along the edge of the bottom, so that to give yourself a
uh-huh.
bit more meat, you could probably get away
Yes.
with using like ring nails to just nail that
Yeah.
first
Yeah. Yeah.
garboard plank on instead of having to do a through fastening. I
Yeah.
would also I would also say if you're fastening on with a structural adhesive like a polyurethane, and by that I mean
Yeah.
the polyurethane and caulking tubes, not Gorilla Glue or anything like that, because
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I don't.
Like the
That stuff is
3M
fine for
5200.
some things. I don't trust it for like really strong connections on its
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
Um,
So actually,
but I
the
think you
the
could
boat
probably get away with
does
very
have.
light. I think you get away with very light fastenings if you were using
Mm,
something like 5200 or Sikaflex. Like you could probably get away
yeah.
with even just tacks or short ring nails to
Yeah. I was
sort of.
actually Yeah, so actually it does have Sikaflex 5200 all the way
Yeah.
in the joint between the bottom panel and the garboard.
Yep.
So I guess that would actually be enough, you know. You probably wouldn't need anything more than that. But yeah, it does have the mechanical fasteners as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never tried doing a boat with just 50 with one of those flexible polyurethanes as the only adhesive. I'm
Mm,
curious to try it sometime, to try it on glued lap strake.
yeah.
That would be
Yeah, that would
helpful.
be interesting.
It'd be even more helpful
Yeah.
if my kids would answer the damn phone.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I guess boat builders are a little bit conservative in that respect. So I like to have a sort of a backup. So
Yeah.
glue is good enough, but you know, it's nice to have a backup as well.
Yeah. Now I
I guess.
knew a local builder who did he did a glued lap strake boat. He was using plywood, but
Mm.
he used Type Bond 3 for all of his joints.
Oh,
And then he used some Sikaflex just to fill it out the edge of the plywood
oh,
to just to cover up the end grain. He had become sensitized to epoxy early on in
ah,
his building
okay.
career, so he was looking for alternatives to that. So I
Mm,
think that could probably work fine. Of course, those PVA type glues, you do need a certain amount of clamping pressure for them to
mm,
be reliably strong, and you get
yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of end grain on a glued a plywood beveled
sure.
joint. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
probably need to make sure that you've applied glue either heavy enough or even maybe do a second pass, hit the end grain first and then do it again. I would do that with epoxy anyway.
Mm.
And
But
there's
that's
also hybrid construction, which is not a terrible idea. Of building the Fiddlehead is a great candidate for doing plywood bottom,
sure.
plywood garboards, glued
Yeah,
together, which gives you all the water tightness you need for that boat, and
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
going traditional construction above. So you could get the best of both worlds very easily.
Mm. Yeah, that would
Um,
work great. You've done that a few times. I've seen on your YouTube channel.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I think it's really great way to produce a boat that's got the ease and the beauty of traditional construction. And I do love traditional construction, but it it has its challenging parts. Um,
Mm.
and of course, when it comes to abuse, sometimes it holds up great, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes fasteners run the risk of
Yeah, yeah,
splitting
yeah.
planks and things like that. So
Yeah, because you have the point load instead of,
yeah,
a continuous fastening with the glue.
that's right. So I
Actually,
think
one of
I
the
got to
details.
wrap up. I got about 5 more minutes. I was just going to
Yeah.
ask. So for a new builder,
Hmm.
what do you think is the biggest challenge to getting started on a project and getting a
Oh,
project
sorry.
completed?
What's that? Okay. Gertie says it's now 10 minutes past 9 here. So
Okay.
we have the final bid, which was 3,500. So congratulations to, I don't know who it is. Maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. You should probably not. But I'll be directly in contact with the lucky and the lucky winner. So I'll be looking
Yep.
forward to delivering this boat. It'll get a fresh coat of varnish. It'll get a fresh coat of paint, and then it'll
Excellent.
be ready to go off for you.
Is it a
Yeah.
local?
I don't know. Is it a local? It's a local.
Okay. Excellent.
It stays in Denmark. Okay, so that's easy. I
Okay.
don't have
Yeah.
to ship it across the
No.
Atlantic.
Creating a
That's
boat
great.
is a huge pain in the ass.
So that's wonderful.
All
Okay, so
right.
thanks everybody for joining in. But did you have a question mark? Question mark.
No, well,
Do you like to say that?
I think we'll cut it. You know what? I think we should keep doing this. We'll do this again. Do this again next month. Have another live stream if people are interested in that.
Yeah,
And
I'd love to discuss it.
we'll
Talk
just
talk.
save questions for then. So
Yeah.
this is
So do you have a topic already, or should we leave that up to our viewers? What we should talk about?
viewers. Do you have any topic suggestions? This is your chance.
Let us know in the comments, right? If there's anything you'd like to
That's
hear us talk about.
Okay. Well, if there's no suggestions, we'll let Chat GPT decide what our subject will be.
ChatGPT, what's the most interesting boat building subject?
Oh my God.
Okay, so
All right.
thanks a lot, Mark.
You
Thanks
take care.
for being part of this.
More than happy. All right.
Thanks to everybody who joined in and took the time to watch this. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks to the lucky winner or the generous winner, who bought this beautiful boat and who has also donated 3. I don't think I mentioned that, but the winner is also donating 3 full boat building apprenticeships in the Fiddlehead Canoe boat building course that I'm launching this August. So I'm matching the price
you
of the
should
boat.
rephrase that. You are donating those 3 courses. The
Well, I guess I am.
purchaser has facilitated that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm matching the purchase price, so which is 3,500. So I'm matching that in youth scholarships for the Fiddlehead Canoe program. So, and the program is $1,000, which means that 3 youth scholarships have now been donated.
Excellent.
So, and you can apply for those. So, if you're under 30, you can apply for a youth scholarships if you're interested in following the course and building one of these boats. So you can get access to it for free.
I will back that up and offer up free auxiliary mentorship services to those youth that sign up for
Ooh,
the course. So
wow,
I'm at your disposal to pepper me with questions and help you figure stuff out.
that would be wonderful.
Okay, there we go.
Thanks.
All right, man.
Okay,
Take care. Have a
bye.
great day.
Take care. You too. Bye.
Bye.